The LA Clippers have been a pretty confusing team after the All-Star break. There was a bit of a skid through the month of February and March after showing a ton of championship level potential through December and January, shortly after they traded for James Harden. Now, they are currently at the fourth spot in the Western Conference, so the fall off hasn't been too crazy. And unlike some other underachieving teams in the West, they look like they won't have to worry about the play-in tournament at this point. But there are things about this group that make me wonder if they are a legitimate championship winning squad. Yes, on paper, they 100% have the personnel to make a deep run in the playoffs. There's Kawhi, who's been ridiculously efficient this entire season, shooting it at 52% from the floor and 41% from three. Paul George has been consistent with his availability this season, and his production on the offensive end has been very efficient, just like Leonard. And then there's Harden, who's embraced more of a pass-first point guard role, averaging 8.6 assists, which is the most a Clippers point guard has averaged since the Chris Paul era. And I do like their bench production. Russ and Norman Powell have been great off the reserves. But their play style does worry me a bit. As we anticipated once they traded for Harden, they are a very isolation 1v1 heavy group right now. I just read the power rankings, and as things stand, they have the third most isolations per 100 possessions in the last 11 years, trailing only two of James Harden's teams in Houston. Whether it's through Leonard or PG or even Harden, this team does find themselves in that trap where they're consistently falling into these 1v1 heavy possessions, and it's hurt them in other areas. For example, they rank dead last in both ball and player movement, and they've seen the league's second largest drop in player movement from last season. So yes, I know they have the talent to pull off an isolation-heavy offense with guys like Leonard, Harden, and George, but your question is, will this be sufficient enough to make a title run? Time and time again, we see teams that fall into this style of play hit this wall despite how much perimeter talent they have on the floor. Case in point, the Celtics. We've seen this totally limit this team time and time again come playoff time. And let's contrast that with the teams that we've actually seen win titles, like the Nuggets or like the Warriors in 2022, or even the Warriors during their prime years. Those teams embraced a system where there was more player and ball movement, even with a ton of perimeter talent, and that limited the issue of stagnation in their offense. Offensive stagnation is one of the biggest common denominators for even the most talented groups not being able to go all the way and win titles. An ISO-heavy offense at certain points in the playoffs doesn't put defenses on their heels as much. Then we have to couple that with the Clippers' lackluster defense. After showing some promise on that end pre-All-Star break, they're now sitting at the 18th spot in defensive rating. So now you ask yourself, is that a championship group? ISO 1v1 heavy offense with the lack of player and ball movement along with the defense that's considered one of the worst amongst current playoff teams? My answer to that question would be no. Yes, the talent is there, but as we've seen time and time again, and hell, even LeBron talked about this on his pod with JJ Redick, the talent can only get you so far. So we'll see, but this is a Clippers team that hasn't been at their best as of late and absolutely needs to make a finals appearance this postseason. We're talking about a team that was built to win a title all the way back in 2019, and despite a revolving door of supporting castmates around George and Leonard, they've gotten nothing out of it. And I know injuries have plagued this team a few times, but there were also seasons where they did have a chance and didn't take advantage. So this franchise has a ton of pressure on them, and they're also looking to stay out of that same situation that they were in during the Chris Paul era. A ton of talent, really one of the most talented teams in the league, but still no finals appearance. They cannot let that be the case again here during the Kawhi PG era. So we'll see how things turn out for them as the season closes and as the playoffs come around. But my fingers are crossed for the squad to get to that playoff level we wanted them to get at for a very, very long time.